There are 3 questions we need to ask before we ever make a decision. What's the purpose? Will this actually accomplish the purpose? And what will the best people think? And it's kind of interesting. About 90% of the time we ask question number 1, what's the purpose? You know what's stunning to me? It isn't 100% of the time. We do stuff all the time and we don't ask what's the purpose. It's the funniest thing. Every school where I became principal, you know one of the first issues we'd face was homework. Isn't homework a tough issue? I think it's one of the toughest issues we face. How much is too much? How much is too little? We've got the standards. What do we do? How much do we drill and kill? How do we handle all that stuff? What's the balance in homework? And there is no one answer. Anything that has one answer, we've long ago solved. But you know what helped us in all 3 of the schools where I was principal with the homework issue? We started asking, what's the purpose? Because, see, we hadn't been asking, what's the purpose for homework? You know what we'd been asking? What's the reason we gave this homework? And the purpose and the reason can be very different things. See, we discovered the reason we assigned page 72 was crystal clear, because it followed page 71. And the reason we assigned page 72 was crystal clear, because we assigned page 72 last year. And the reason we gave 25 problems for homework was crystal clear, because there was 25 problems on page 72. But once we started asking ourselves, what's the purpose? It completely changed how we did homework. Because every night we'd go, what's the purpose of this assignment? And about 50% of the time we asked question number 2, will this actually work? But you know the real difference maker? Question number 3, what will the best people think? Because see, about 10% of the time we ask question number 3, what will the best people think? But it's not 100% of the people ask question number 3 10% of the time. It's 10% of the people ask question number 3 100% of the time. Do you know why great teachers never yell at kids? Because the good kids don't want them to. Because the good kids don't want them to. You know why the great teachers don't ever allow certain kids in their classroom to not pay attention and not be attentive? Because the good kids don't want them to. Which kids do the good kids want learning in that classroom? Every single one of them. That's amazing. That's how come. That's how come we don't use sarcasm, because the good kids don't want us to. Even if they're never the ones that directed, the good kids don't want us to. There's kids who might want us to, but it's never the best. Now, has anybody ever been in a school or a business or an organization where you've ever seen a sign anything like this? Anybody ever seen a sign like this? Now, you all help me out. What's the purpose of this? Remember our 3 questions. What's the purpose of this sign? You may think the purpose is to tick people off, but that's actually the result of this sign. What's the purpose of this sign? Cut down on copies, save paper, isn't that right? So, and how many people in a school do we put this sign up there for? 2 or 3 people. So what I'm hearing you say, now again, I told you I'm from Missouri and I'm not real smart. The other day I was speaking to a group in Missouri. A group, and I told them I was from Missouri. One lady raised her hand and said, you're the first person from Missouri I've ever seen wearing shoes. So I took that as a compliment. I'm sorry some of you felt the need to look down. But anyhow, what I'm hearing you say is, the purpose of this sign is to keep people who abuse the copier from abusing the copier. Is that correct? Okay. Do people who abuse the copier think it's okay to abuse the copier? Wow. You all think the answer is yes? Wow. So that means then if they want to run off their personal garage sale flyer on the school copier, then they give it to the principal to run off for them. Is that right? Oh, they don't think it's okay. Oh, they just do it anyway. Do you know you don't govern anybody's behavior by rules? Do you know everybody knows the rules? If you have a rule in a classroom or in a school or in a school district people do not inherently know, can I tell you something? It's a stupid rule. Where are my high school people? Do y'all know you don't need to post no smoking signs in your boys' bathrooms at the high school? Because you don't have a boy in there that doesn't know it shouldn't be smoking. Some of them may do it anyway. We don't govern adults' behaviors by rules either. You know what's amazing is when you think about rules, which teacher in a school has more rules than any other teacher? The worst teacher in a school. Did you know great teachers don't even have rules? Do you know what great teachers have? Expectations. And you know the difference between rules and expectations? Rules have consequences and expectations don't. And if you ask a great teacher, what are you going to do if the kids don't do it? You know what the great teacher says? I don't know. Kids all do it. I don't know. See, the problem with this sign isn't that it doesn't work. That's where we've gotten confused. You know what the problem with this sign is? The person with this sign, who put this sign up didn't ask question number 3. Because which people in a school think this sign was put up there for them? All the good ones, all the high achievers, all the people whose lives, just like yours, are completely driven by guilt. Isn't that right? They see this sign and they think, oh man, this sign must be up there for me. One time 11 years ago, I made 23 copies. I got to reimburse the school for those 3 copies. Do you know great teachers will never take anything out on their students? Rest assured, no matter how poorly someone treats a great teacher, they will never take anything out on their students. Poor teachers stay up late at night so they can watch the news and be in a bad mood the next day and take it out on their students. But you know what happens with great teachers? They become disenfranchised from the school. They close their door emotionally to the leader. Because see, the problem with this sign is the person who put up this sign didn't ask question number 3. Because the person who put up this sign decided that the people who abuse the copier are more important than the people who don't. And let me tell you something, folks, the people who abuse the copier are way less important than the people who don't. And the difficult people don't even ignore the sign. I wish they would. What do the difficult people do with the sign? They take down the sign and make 28 copies of the sign, don't they? Do shoplifters think it's okay to shoplift? A bunch of you are still saying yes. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we've got a pattern going on here that I really need you to grab a hold of there at some point. So you're saying yes. So that means then, since they think it's okay, that means they go up to the manager and ask for a big sack. Because they got a whole lot of stealing they're going to do that day. Is that right? How'd you know before they walked in here today they knew it was wrong? Because what do? They hide it. See, if they thought it was okay, they'd ask you to hold open their coat whenever they put a Thanksgiving turkey underneath their arm. The problem with those signs isn't that they don't work. The problem is how you feel if you're somebody who's an honest person. Give you another example. Where are my middle school and high school people here? Any of y'all have bells and passing time? You know, passing time when the bell rings and the kids move to a new class? How long's y'all's passing time? 5 minutes. Now, I didn't say how long does it seem. I asked how long is it? 5 minutes. What do y'all think? What's your best guess that principals would like teachers to be doing during passing time? Any wild guesses? Standing out in the hallway. And did you all know that in some parts of the country, for the first day, some places, I know you won't believe this, but it's true, day and a half of school, all the teachers are out in the hallway. But what happens next? This is not a criticism, this is human nature. And if the people in this room don't understand human nature, we can neither teach nor lead successfully. I can let you know that in advance. What happens next is this. We all get busy and we all get caught up, but there's another phenomenon. If the first day of school there are 12 other teachers out in my hallway supervision is pretty darn easy. And if a month later there's five other teachers out in the hallway supervision's not too bad. But if a month later there's only one other teacher out in the hallway and the other teacher's a nerd, I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing out here in this hallway? And historically and traditionally, in states far, far, far away from here, let's just pretend it's mid-October, and let's just pretend there are less teachers out in the hallway than a principal might have wished. In the old days, in states far, far, far away from here, what kind of a reminder would principals have put in teachers' mailboxes? What are those old little friendly written reminders that principals used to put in teachers' mailboxes? Memo, the all-powerful, always present, always effective memo. And when teachers pull those memos out of their mailbox, they salute those memos, don't they? And they say, yes, sir, ma'am, let me know the time, the place, the hallway. Isn't that right? There are not many cardinal rules in education, but I'm going to give you one right now. And that rule is we never deliver bad news in writing. The worse the news, the more effort that goes into delivering it. Remember years ago, if a student acted up, the teacher used to send a note home with the student instead of picking up the phone and calling the parent? Years ago. Do you remember why we'd send that note instead of calling the parent? Because we were scared to death. And you know what we're most scared of? We're scared because we don't know what to say. You know why I wrote Dealing with Difficult Parents? Because I became principal at 3 different schools, and all 3 of those schools I had some teachers that didn't know what to say to parents. And I'm not talking about in general. I'm talking about word for word, specific, exact language. Here's how you deliver bad news. Here's how you deliver good news. Here's what you do if a parent pulls out the F word, fair. Because I used to always tell my teachers, I'm not smart enough to think of 2 things that'll work, but here's one, you know, just in case. Because I don't know about you, but I've been in situations at different times where I wouldn't mind having one, you know, just in case. Kind of reminds me when I was in high school and college. Seldom, if ever, would I ever pick up a phone and call a girl or a woman up and ask them out for a date. You know the reason I wouldn't? Didn't know what to say. They always knew what to say. No, but I never knew what to say. But I'll tell you this, if somebody told me what to say, I'd have been saying it. The other thing I do know, if we rely on students to deliver bad news to their parents, in some parts of the country, some of the students, I've read this, some of the students will taint the story. I'm serious, I've read that. Some of the kids will taint the story. And do you know it takes 8 times longer to unlearn something than it does learn something? Do you know if that kid beats you home first, that parent's never going to completely believe you? And you can think they ought to, of course, but they're not. Well, of course they ought to, but they're not. See, that phone is our best friend unless it's ringing. And did you know if you beat that child home first, the parent's never going to completely believe the kid? And they ought to, it's their child, but they're not. So none of us will ever deliver bad news in writing again. None of us will ever post negative signs, send negative notes home, send negative emails. None of us will ever do that again. You know, when you think about that person, that teacher that has the more rules than any other teacher, they never have enough rules, do they? First day of school, they have 23 rules. 2 weeks later, they have an addendum because those 23 weren't enough. So none of us will ever deliver bad news in writing again. Instead, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a giant faculty meeting here, and I love faculty meetings. I love them. Do you all know great principals have faculty meetings teachers look forward to and value? Do you all know that? Other principals either don't have faculty meetings or teachers don't look forward to and value them. Great principals have faculty meetings teachers look forward to and value. The first reason I tell people that so principals know it's possible. But think about it this way. This isn't even a criticism. Think of it this way. If when you were a teacher, faculty meetings were kind of a joke, and you'd become an assistant principal and faculty meetings weren't valued, do you see how you might think that's the way they're supposed to be? But if you've ever worked with one great principal, not only do they know that's not the way they're supposed to be, they know one way to make them effective. You know what they do? Do whatever that principal did. Just like if you're a first-year teacher and you student taught with an exemplary teacher and you don't know what to do, you know what you do? Do whatever that teacher did until you get your own personality involved there. So we're going to have a giant faculty meeting here, and I'm going to divide the room in half right down the middle. And this side of the room over here, you all are my superstars, my high achievers, my people whose lives, like we talked about, are completely driven by guilt. I appreciate you doing that so much for me. And you all over here, you all are my mediocres. And I appreciate some of you role-playing so quickly. I said you're mediocres. 2 of you rolled your eyes at me. 1 of you pretended you were sleeping. And a couple of you started grading papers here at the faculty meeting. So I appreciate you getting in that role play for me so quickly. We're going to talk about the hallway. Remember our 3 questions. What's the purpose? What's my purpose? Get more teachers out in the hallway. Does that make sense? That's my purpose. Get more teachers out in the hallway. Why didn't I say all? Never going to get them, huh? Can I tell y'all something? Y'all don't know me. Y'all know, and I know that because I heard somebody back there go, who's that idiot up there talking? See, you all don't know me. Can I tell you something? I could have got all my teachers out in the hallway. My last school had about 95 staff members, and if my life depended on it, I could have got all my teachers out in the hallway. I'm just a little different that way. It's not better or worse, just one of those things I can do. But you know what I realized, folks? That's if my life depended on it. My life doesn't depend on it. You know what's important to me? That every teacher in a school treat every student with respect and dignity every single day. That's what's important to me. The hallway'd be nice, but treating kids with respect and dignity. And I've learned you better never pretend something's really important that isn't really important, because then you know what happens? We all get confused and start to think the things that are really important aren't really important. And in education, you're always going to have people telling you a whole bunch of things are really important that aren't really important. And I just don't want the people in here ever losing sight of the things that are. You know the other reason I didn't say all? Because if I'd said all, which side of the room did I just empower to ruin it for us? And you already ruined enough things, I ain't going to let you ruin this too, isn't that right? Which side of the room has my most important people on it? Right over here, superstars. Mediocre's the law ain't for sale no more. I hate to tell you all that, but it isn't. Which side of the room has the people who are also more likely to actually be out in the hallway? This side over here. Watch who we give the power to and watch what happens as a result. Can I tell you something? Negative people have no power. We put it on a platter and hand it to them. Negative students have no power. We put it on a platter and hand it to them. And you know how we do that? By insulting everybody. That's what we do. We give them power. We decide they're the most important students, so we're going to treat everybody in this fashion. Negative parents have no power. Negative peers have no power. We got to stop giving away power. If you've ever worked with a bully teacher, you know why they're a bully teacher? It's not because somebody lets them, it's because it works. Who has the smallest class size of anybody in your school? Who has the easiest caseload? Who never does any extracurricular work? And who would we never ask to be on any committees? We keep that up, they ain't never quitting. Watch who we give the power to and watch what happens as a result. Superstars, mediocres. What's my purpose? Get more people out in the hallway. Watch who we give the power to and watch what happens as a result. Hey folks, now listen. I expect every single one of you to be out in the hallway between classes. You know what, today there were 2 fights out in the hallway and there weren't any teachers out there, and I expect every one of you to be out in the hallway between classes. You know, I talked about this at the first faculty meeting of the year. And in addition, it's in the faculty. Is that a traditional approach? Could it have been a memo or an email? Let's just see how effective we are. Superstars, how do y'all feel? Now, I hear a couple superstars saying good and great. And folks, we have got to know people just a smidgen better than that. Did any of y'all grow up with brothers and sisters? And if your brother and sister did something wrong and you got ripped for it, did that build a special bond between you and your brother and sister? That, as a matter of fact, you probably still remember to this day? Because you know what, folks? We don't feel great when that stuff happens. How do we feel? Ticked off. What are you talking to me for? Why don't you talk to them? For 23 years you've been talking to me, and for 23 years I've been waiting for somebody to talk to them. What was my purpose? Get more people out in the hallway. You all more likely or less likely to be out in the hallway tomorrow? Less likely. But if you are out there, you'll be in a bad mood and you'll be tripping kids, won't you? And is my relationship with you better or worse? Worse. And is our school going to go farther or less far? And whose fault is that? Mine. That's exactly right. Don't you ever forget it. But why don't we see how these, slackers over here are doing? How do you all feel? I mean, those of you who were even at the meeting, how do you feel? Couldn't care less, wasn't paying any attention. I heard somebody in the back go, "What'd he say?" Isn't that right? You know what? If I was going to get yelled at, I'm dang glad I wasn't out there. What was my purpose? Are you all more likely to be out in the hallway tomorrow? Nope. And is my relationship with you better or worse? The same or even worse? Point to the side of the room that I gave the power and attention to. I told you to be out there. You need to be out there. You better be out there. I expect you to be out there. And which side of the room was uncomfortable? And you all did change your behavior, didn't you? Y'all became more like them. And you want to know what's even scarier? You all became more like you too. You've retrenched. You know what the enemy is now. You're never going out in the hallway. Even if you have to go to the bathroom, you'll tie sheets together and go out the outside windows if that's what it takes. Because do you know what I decided? Apparently I decided that my shoplifters were more important than my customers. And you know what I ended up with, don't you? More shoplifters and less customers. But there's nothing special about pointing out what others do wrong. The worst teacher in a school spends their entire career pointing out what everybody else does wrong. There's no gift in that. A monkey can do that. But you know the gift each one of you brings your classrooms and brings your school? You teach and model the difference between right and wrong every single day. That's the gift. So let's replay the meeting. Superstars, mediocres. What's my purpose? More teachers in the hallway. Watch who we give the power to and watch what happens as a result. Hey folks, now listen. I know how full every single one of your plates are. And I just appreciate so much those of you who have made that extra effort to be out in the hallway between classes. You know what, today I happened to be out in the hallway and there's two boys out there about to fight. And there's a teacher out there and I don't even think that teacher saw them. And right before they got in a fight, one of the boys looked up, saw the teacher, patted his buddy on the shoulder, pointed to the teacher, and they each walked their separate ways. And I just appreciate so much those of you who have made that extra effort to be out in the hallway between classes. It makes our school a safer place for all of our students, and it makes our school a safer place for all of us. Thank you. Superstars, how do y'all feel? Good. How many of you are pretty sure that was you I was just talking about? I didn't see any kids. It must have been me. Isn't that right? That is called anonymous public praise. Everybody who was doing it thinks you were talking about them. And what was my purpose? More teachers out in the hallway. You all more likely or less likely to be out in the hallway tomorrow? More likely. My relationship with you better or worse? Is our school going to go farther or less far? And whose fault is that? Mine. That's exactly right. Don't you ever forget it. You know why I ask you that last question? I want you to be keenly aware of something. When we praise and value someone, we gain power, we don't lose it. Did you know if I compliment you often enough, do you know what you begin to think I have? Impeccably good taste. You start thinking, that's the wisest man in the world. Ain't nobody else ever noticed all these wonderful qualities in me before. But why don't we see how these people here, on the other side of the tracks are doing? How do you all feel? Now, I hear a few people saying guilty, and could the people saying guilty do me one teensy-weensy tiny favor? Toughen up, you big bunch of sissies. Come on! Mediocres don't feel guilty about nothing. Come on, they do less than anybody else and they win the most. Come on, who couldn't care less? Come on, who couldn't care less? Come on, who couldn't care less? This is called wait time right here. I can wait you out. Don't matter to me.